Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to the Duke Wisdom Podcast. This episode today will probably be a little bit shorter of one, going on vacation, and so over the weekend I've got to record a quicker episode. This is just going to be a Q&A one. I had a tweet that I tweeted out yesterday that said looking for Q&A questions for an episode of the pod. I got a few back, nothing crazy, but I'll go into those in depth here. Thanks for listening again. Make sure to subscribe, follow, share the podcast. So I'll jump right into it, man. The guys at the 5 Point Play podcast, who hopefully will be guesting on this pod and I on theirs at some point, asked who's the best one and done player you've seen at Duke. I'm going to take this as like an in-person question. It's the same answer either way. It's Zion Williamson. It's clearly Zion Williamson. The numbers Zion put up were positively ludicrous, but I'll tell an in-person story. I went to, I think, the first two home games of the season in 2018-19. They played Army and Eastern Michigan. And there's one moment about Zion that's just, I'll never forget it in my life. It was against Eastern Michigan, and I was sitting behind the goal. My dad and I were sitting behind the goal, and Cam Reddish dribbles down the court, gets past midcourt, and he throws a lob up to Zion. And the ball, I mean, it's over the square. Zion jumps up, grabs that thing over the square, and throws it down. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous, the amount of air he got on that. And when he did that, I mean, I already knew, but it was like, we're not dealing with a normal top 3 recruit here. This guy is something else. He's something completely different. And so, without a doubt, the best one and done player that I've seen at Duke is Zion Williamson. I think he is probably the best one and done player anyone has seen, period. In person, that might change, but I will offer kind of a secondary answer to this outside of Zion in Marvin Bagley. Marvin Bagley is probably the second best that I've seen in person. I went to see one game in particular against Florida State. That was a ranked matchup back in 2018, and Marvin had like 30 and 20 or something crazy like that. And just some of the shots he was making, just willing them in. He's such an incredible player that was so underrated because of Zion Williamson the very next season, and RJ Barrett as well. But I mean, Marvin Bagley had one of the most dominant seasons in Duke basketball history. And he was sharing the front court with another lottery pick in Wendell Carter. That didn't really seem to matter for him because he was just so skilled that he got his shots, he got his buckets, he got his rebounds. And it's a real shame that he got overshadowed by Zion coming in the next season because he's still one of 3 freshmen ever win ACC Player of the Year and just a first-team All-American. I mean, what a player. So let's go to the next question. And I think this is an interesting one. It says an extra tired number is. I wrote Kyle Singler. I'm not counting any one and dones unless they come back to finish a degree. Well, neither would I. And I don't think the university will. They have kind of this unwritten rule that you have to graduate and you have to have some sort of national award or lead the school in some sort of category. So National Player of the Year or National Defensive Player of the Year or lead Duke in a major statistic. So points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals. Every single player except for Jeff Mullins, I think, checks that box. But Mullins honestly may have checked one of those boxes at the time, and I'm just not aware of it. I know Heyman, NPOY, Dick Rote, NPOY. Jaminsky, I think, led Duke in scoring at the time that he left, and in rebounding maybe as well, maybe blocks also. And then Johnny Dawkins led Duke in scoring, was National Player of the Year. Christian Laettner, NPOY. Bobby Hurley leads the NCAA in assist. Grant Hill was National Defensive Player of the Year. Shane Battier in DPOY and POY. Jay Will was National Player of the Year. JJ Redick, National Player of the Year, all-time NCAA three-point leader at the time, and all-time Duke leading scorer still. Sheldon Williams in DPOY, plus leads all-time in rebounds and blocks. So there's that sort of unwritten criteria that no player recently has technically met. The only National Player of the Year since Redick is Zion Williamson, who is probably the best player since JJ Redick at Duke, and he can't get it retired because he didn't graduate. And I 100% agree that if you don't graduate, you can't get it retired. So if you're looking for players, look, if you sift through like guys pre-2000, I mean, there's maybe even a couple candidates that have like sort of a case, like maybe Bob Varga has a little bit of a case, or Gene Banks maybe has a bit of a case. I forgot Danny Ferry. He was National Player of the Year as well. He got his jersey retired. But ultimately, I think if you're looking for somebody more recent to have their jersey retired, post Redick, the options are like Shire, Singler, Smith, Cook, and Allen, really. And Grayson Allen never won any national awards. He was an All-American. He was a third-team All-American his sophomore season. He's 12th all-time in scoring. He's a national champion. Ultimately, Grayson Allen's case just isn't very strong. Quinn Cook was never a consensus All-American. I believe he was a Sporting News second-team All-American in 15. A national champion, of course, multiple-time All-ACC player. I think Quinn's somewhere in the 20s, the upper 20s all-time at Duke in scoring. And his case, ultimately, when compared to everybody else, not very strong. Then you get to the other three guys. John Shire is a national champion. He was the best player on a national championship team, which in every other case before 2010 meant jersey retirement. But he was second team All-American his senior year, never anything higher, never ACC player of the year, doesn't lead Duke in anything. He's 10th all-time in scoring, which is pretty impressive. But ultimately, I don't know if John checks enough boxes. Nolan Smith checks more boxes in some ways, less in others, because he's like 18th in scoring, I think, which is lower than Shire, but he was ACC player of the year. He was a first team All-American, but ultimately doesn't check enough boxes. Again, I think the guy that checks the most boxes still technically doesn't check one. The ones that count is Kyle Singler. Kyle Singler is 4th all-time in scoring at Duke, 7th in the ACC. I believe he's top 10 in rebounding, blocks, and like a million other statistics. Such a well-rounded player. I think because he started so good as a freshman and his improvement wasn't drastic, a lot of people kind of look over it. A lot of people kind of look past Kyle Singler's stats because he didn't really improve all that much. But 4-time All-ACC player, the Final Four most outstanding player in 2010, might I add. The only graduate to take home that honor for Duke and not have his jersey retired. Kyle is so dominant in so many statistics, and he was so dominant for 4 years, and he's part of that national championship team. Kyle Singler, let's add Final Four most outstanding player to the list of awards that a player can win and qualify for jersey retirement. Because if you add that in, it only adds 2 more players that don't have their jersey retired to potential consideration, and that's Singler and Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones didn't graduate, so he's out of consideration. Singler deserves to be up there. If they're going to retire somebody, it's got to be Kyle Singler. I 100% agree with you. It's been a minute. It's been a while. We're going on 13 years since Singler left Duke with no action. I'm not going to say it won't happen, but I'm getting less hopeful that it will. And it seems less likely that a modern player is going to get his jersey retired, because a player of that quality, they don't typically stay for 4 years. If Kyle Filipowski stayed for 4 years, I'd say him. I no longer think that's going to happen, so I'm going to talk myself out of that, but he could if he stayed 4 years. I'm going to say it's Singler. It should be Singler, but if it's not Singler, I have no clue.
Want to join a community of Duke accounts publishing news, theories, and predictions on Duke athletics? Join the Duke Wisdom Network. Just go to dukewisdom.org/join network today and fill out the form with your name and social media. Or you can DM at Duke_wisdom on Twitter or Instagram. Become a part of the community of Duke fans publishing their takes today. Again, that's dukewisdom.org/join network, or DM at Duke_wisdom on Twitter or Instagram.
All right, next question. Hurley is the greatest point guard in Duke history. Williams is the most explosive, but Amaker is the blueprint. Agree or disagree? Agree. Tentatively agree. I will give Hurley the nod as best point guard because he is more of a true point guard than Jay Williams. Jay Williams was the point guard. I'll give Hurley the nod because of 2 chips and being more of a pure point guard and the NCAA all-time assist leader. That I will give Hurley the nod for that. Jay Williams is a better player than Bobby Hurley. He was at Duke. Jay Williams would be the ACC's all-time leading scorer, hands down, if he played a 4th season. He scored the most points all-time at Duke through 2 seasons, and the most all-time at Duke through 3 seasons. He had 2,100 points, over 2,100 points in 3 seasons. I mean, that's just crazy. I talked about Singler being 4th all-time in scoring. Jay Will was like less than 200 points off of Singler in 3 years. And so his scoring was insane. Technically a 2-time National Player of the Year. Jay Williams, 100% yes, is the most explosive point guard in Duke history. He's a better player than Hurley, but I can give up the best point guard title to Hurley, because I guess at being a point guard, Hurley was probably the best. Jay Williams, however, was a better player overall. And the last part of this is Tommy Amaker was the blueprint. I mean, yeah. If you talk about being the blueprint of what a Duke point guard is, that tenacity on defense, that anchoring kind of those first dominant Duke teams as the front man and the point guard. And yeah, he became kind of that blueprint that later point guards like Wojo and Chris Duhon would follow. And so, yeah, in a lot of ways, Tommy Amaker is the blueprint of what a Duke point guard became under Coach K. So I can't agree with that. I don't know if it'll look the same. It's already kind of looking different under Shire and has looked different for a while now. But yeah, I'll say I agree with this. I had to do some roundabout talking to convince myself into Hurley over Williams, and I'll talk myself into him as a point guard. And okay, so last question. I said this one was going to be a short one. Chances of Sean Stewart being a one and done? Very little. I'm not seeing him on mocks. I'm not going to say that can't happen, but when you've got a team this stacked, there's only so many players that can get so many touches, and there's only so many players that can leave early.
Sorry for the abrupt finish of the episode. The audio got cut off, but thanks so much for listening in, and there'll be a full episode coming up this Thursday, so make sure to tune in for that.